Aaron said it.
Welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. We are recording a couple days later because I was selfish and it was my 25th wedding anniversary. So Brittany and I hung out together, and
happy anniversary.
Recording a podcast isn't all that romantic, you know. So, but 25 years of marriage. So yeah, so happy anniversary to my wonderful lobster. So. That's a Friends reference, by the way, that throws a lot of people every time I say, you know, you're my lobster. They think that I'm weird, but whatever. Exciting. I know we're the Who Dat Jedi podcast, but let's talk about Pelicans for a second. So Zion, is he going to leave? And,
well, not yet.
And can we get people's parents to shut the up, please? Your son's a big boy making big bucks, you know, so just sit down, shut up, you know. Anyway, sorry.
It's just been a supernova of news for the NBA over the last day or so. So it's just, I just chalk that up to that.
It's what Luka's talking about. He wants out too, right?
I mean, who knows? Yeah. But there was just things breaking left and right. And it was just, everything was going. The big news obviously is they let the coach go.
I buried the lead on that one, but you know, and I don't know, you know, and it's like, but it just drives me nuts when parents get involved. You know what I mean? It's like at the college level, even makes me kind of go, shut up. You know, did your parents call the professor when you got a bad grade on a test? You know, it happens nowadays. And now it's like you got, I don't know, it just bothers me. But especially, okay, man, you are a professional basketball player. And I get it that you are only, 20 years old. You know, get it. But, you got a contract, and if you don't like it, that some people get hired at jobs, then they find out it wasn't all it's cracked up to be. So, but somebody made a good point on Twitter, and I'm sorry, this doesn't have anything to do with Star Wars. Everybody made a good point. They said, we should be more worried if Zion was really happy with the way things are going with the Pelicans. So maybe this will light a fire under the organization's butt to get some things right. So.
Well, the difficulty here is for Zion. I mean, and this is where the differences in the sport come into play. When you're a 20-year-old football player, a 20-year-old baseball player, you're most likely spending your time in college or in the minors. You're doing that kind of thing. 20-year-old NBA player, he can be a superstar, and so
right.
The moment he got drafted, he's no longer Zion, the 20-year-old kid. He's Zion Incorporated. So they're always thinking about how they can expand their brand, their awareness, whatever, and nothing does that as much as winning. I mean, whether it's Giannis or Harden, whatever, that doesn't. The difficult part for the Pelicans, though, is this is now the second number one overall guy they've gotten. This is now the third or fourth major star they've had in town since they've been here. They got to make it work.
Yeah.
After it didn't work with CP3, it didn't work with Anthony Davis. They have to make it work with Zion, because you can't just simply be in a cycle of draft a superstar, spend a few years trying to make the playoffs, superstar leaves, and rebuild.
I will say this household is team teaspoon. So that'd be a daring choice and a bold choice and a good choice for the Pelicans.
It'd be interesting. I'm with Fredo. You got to get it right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care who it is. I just that you get it right, because at this point it's, franchise threatening to bungle it over and over and over like this. I mean, as long as Gale's there, the team's going to be here. But what happens, when it passes on to new ownership, and
Right.
at that point, the future of the franchise is at stake. So you got to get it right. Zion is transcendently talented, and if you look at the raw numbers, like he's doing things that other people have never done before, and the wins, they're actually about where they normally are for a young superstar. Somebody of his age in the NBA is generally not winning a whole lot. And they were on the cusp of the playoffs, and so they were basically on schedule. But the problem is, like, now you've parted ways with 2 coaches in 2 years, and it gives off the impression that you have no idea what you're doing.
It's like Nebraska football.
Yeah. It becomes a spiral. So yeah, they got to get this hire right. They got to make Zion happy and make Pelicans fans happy in the process.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, y'all didn't come to listen about, sports, but we tend to talk sports every now and again. So there's a big thing that's happening. And of course, everybody batting down the hatches because we got rain a coming. So everybody, tis the season. So, but let's let's put some silver linings around those clouds, and let's talk some Star Wars and Loki tonight. So we're going to be in Marvel and Star Wars. This will be the crossover event of the podcast. So, but first, as always, we're going to start with trivia. So, Fredo, I'm going to start with you. Holy cow! What pack animal does a pike-wielding picador ride in the Geonosis Arena? Did I pronounce all those right? What pack animal does a pike-wielding picador ride in the Geonosis Arena?
I can picture the animal. I cannot remember the name. So,
oh my God, I don't even know this.
A dewback? I don't know.
Dave, do you know?
No idea.
You know what?
No idea.
You know what we should do? We should see who listens, and we should leave this we're just going to leave that answer as unanswered. So see if anybody on Twitter will let us know what they think the answer is.
You can't do that to me. I need to know what is the answer.
Well, here, let me do this. I'll hold it up to the camera so you guys can maybe see it. It's the blue one.
Oh my gosh.
Never heard of that.
I am a big Star Wars nerd, but I have never heard of that. So, folks, if you go to our Twitter account, and let us know what you think the answer is. I don't know. Maybe we'll send you some stickers or something. We got some Who Dat Jedi stickers, don't we? I've got some still. So okay. So yeah, I'll say it once again. What pack animal does a pike-wielding picador ride in the Geonosis Arena? I'm just going to set that aside because 3 of us were stumped.
I think it's the hardest question we've had.
I think so, man. So, Fredo, I'm not going to give you any negative points for that. So, I'm going to give you another question, actually. All right. Okay. Who does C-3PO refer to as very old indeed soon after meeting him? Who does C-3PO refer to as, very odd indeed. I'm sorry, not old. Oh. Odd. I even got my glasses on. Very odd indeed.
Okay, I was about to say I have no idea how old, but very odd, Jar Jar Binks.
That is Jar Jar Binks. That is the correct answer. All right, Dave, to you. Oh, come on. Because I have my rule of I got to read the first one I see. What milestone did the Millennium Falcon beat in its record-setting Kessel Run, according to Han? What milestone did the Millennium Falcon beat in its record-setting Kessel Run, according to Han?
Well, I can never really remember this one, so it's actually kind of challenging for me. I know that you probably have it committed to memory. I think it's 12 parsecs.
12 parsecs is the answer, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because the funny gag in Solo is, he's like, it's 12 if you round down.
Yeah. And, of course, the gag in Force Awakens is, made the Kessel Run in 14 parsecs, and Han yells 12, 14, which was good. All right. So for me, how many troopers fall to Leia's blaster before she is captured aboard her consular ship?
How many? Wow.
How many troopers fall to Leia's blaster before she's captured aboard her consular ship? So it's how many troopers did Leia shoot? She only shot one. Yep, just shot one.
All right.
Yep, just shot one. All right. Now we're all warmed up, but yeah, now let's see how many people respond to us on Twitter. And even if you want to, like, if you look up the answer, that's fine too. But yeah. And if you can find a picture online of what this creature was, that would be interesting as well. Thinking about breaking out my encyclopedias that I got for Christmas. But instead, Fredo, tell us what's new in Geek World.
Okay, so I'll start with, speaking of geek stuff, let's just start with kind of the first one regarding Disney Plus. They've officially made it official. They're shifting all their premieres to Wednesdays. So, starting with Loki, all of the following major TV series that they're going to premiere on Disney Plus, rather than premiering on Fridays, they're going to premiere 2 days early on Wednesday. So, your Mandalorian, your Book of Boba Fett,
Did they say why?
your Turner and Hooch, they're going to be Wednesday. Let me see.
Yeah, I read the story.
Mhm.
Just to jump in, yeah, Loki did really well. And
Number one.
and there's a lot of competition on Fridays. Netflix usually drops on Friday.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what they took a look at the fact that Loki became their instant hot new number one most streamed new show ever.
However, they didn't take into consideration me and Brittany at Target last night, and we went, forgot to watch Loki. So you took us out of our routine, Disney, but now that is going to be the routine. All right, cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so expect that now here going forward. And, so it's not going to be just for one thing, because I don't know if it was by design because of the Bad Batch being on Fridays, but now it's going to be this way going forward. So
it's an interesting thing because, like, Friday and Saturday used to be like a death slot for networks, right? You couldn't program in those slots and get people to watch. Oh, it was Monday through Thursday.
Because
right?
people go out on Fridays. And then during the pandemic, nobody was going out. So release that stuff on Fridays. Now people can start going out again on Fridays. And so, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to get ahead. See, here's the thing. It's all about those tweets and retweets and likes. It's all about driving the conversation. So they definitely want to be ahead of the curve in regards to the way people respond to their shows. And if they've being Wednesday, I suppose try to get to the head, all to their good. Move right quick to the next. Well, actually, not the next. The one after the next Star Wars TV show. The directs confirmed that our good friend Forrest Whitaker is going to come back for Andor as what's his name, Saw Gerrera. And they're also reporting that there's rumors that Ben Mendelsohn will come back as Krennic for Andor. So one's confirmed. One is pretty much guaranteed that's going to happen. We're going to get Saw Gerrera back into Star Wars once again for Andor, which kind of doesn't surprise you because we've seen him in all the other properties. We saw him in Rebels. We just saw him in Bad Batch. But they are bringing back Ben Mendelsohn as well to play Krennic before.
And that is a rumor, right? I mean, because the Forrest Whitaker thing got dropped by the guy who was in Thor and the doctor who was in Thor and now is in Andor. Skelly.
Yeah. Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah. Anyway, he dropped it in an interview, going, "Yeah, I had scenes with Forrest Whitaker," and everybody's, "Huh? Well, okay."
But yeah, it's a rumor. It's not confirmed. But yeah, the idea is that you will get both Krennic and Saw back into Star Wars.
So we get to see Saw.
We get to see Saw. Yes.
We already saw Saw.
Several times we saw Saw.
Mm-hmm.
But can we see Saw again after we saw. All right, I'm done. I'm sorry.
All right. So from two names that are coming back to one that says he's not coming back. So last week Liam Neeson was in doing the interview with Jimmy Kimmel's show.
You want me to play the clip?
Yeah, if you got it.
Thank you, technology. So here we go.
Yes, I heard Ewan McGregor was going to do a series. No, I don't think so. No, I haven't been approached. They don't have enough.
The thing about it is, you said you have or you haven't been approached about it?
I haven't been approached.
I see. Interesting.
But
so basically, Liam Neeson says he has not been approached to be part of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then says they couldn't afford me while making that dollar sign with his hands, meaning he's expecting that if he's going to do this, he's going to get handsomely rewarded.
And like I told you guys in our private chat, what do actors do for a living?
They act.
They act and they lie, right? I mean, if he was just, I don't know. It's easy just to say, no, I'm not going to be in it because, otherwise it's like, I don't know. The other thing is that he might not have been approached yet because they could just call him in because it's probably just going to be voiceover work,
Right.
So
right.
I don't know.
But you would figure that in some instances, voiceover work's easy to get in and do at the last minute, or you could have gotten that done first.
I bet he's lying. I just bet dollars to donuts he's lying.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I don't know. Dave, what do you think? You got like a look on your face like you're skeptical.
I don't know. I'm just skeptical. Yeah, that's it. I think we'll see. I think it's cute and it's funny. Like that was a better way to deal with the questioning than most people have. I think because like a lot of the time we critique these actors who step in it a little bit, and in this case he had fun with it and was like, hey, pony up a little bit, and so I like that.
Yeah,
I thought it was fun, but we'll see.
So moving from that, then I'll mention right quick, there is going to be Barnes & Noble's doing a virtual event with all 5 authors of the High Republic books for next month, not this Monday coming up, the last Monday of the month, the 28th, at 5 p.m. our time, so 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central. And it's going to be via Zoom, because obviously virtually. But yeah, they're going to have Kevin Scott, Daniel Jose Older, Justina Ireland, Claudia Gray, and Charles Soule, all doing a panel on the High Republic book and the next series of books that are supposed to be coming out. So it's free to attend, obviously, but they do want you to sign up via their Eventbrite link. So you have to get a ticket, but it's free of charge for anybody who wants to do that. I don't know. I want to say the last one, the one that they did when they premiered the whole High Republic line, well, ended up being rather fun and good.
Cool. I don't have anything else to say because I haven't read any of the
crowd
High
goes
Republic
wild.
stuff. I haven't read any of the High Republic stuff, and what I need to do is I need to go down to the comic book store and just buy that because I'm not. I've got a couple novels that are sitting on the bedstand that I haven't gotten to, but comic books I'll probably get through a little quicker.
Yeah, I've been in the same boat lately. I haven't been able to read as much. Early in the pandemic, that was like one of the best like side effects for me was that I just sat down and read more. And lately it hasn't been the case. So I need to just force myself to do that.
Okay, well, we'll finish off on a couple of news regarding possible upcoming movies. First things last, they asked Taika Waititi, whom we said last show have wrapped principal photography on Thor: Love and Thunder, as to whether or not his next movie project was going to be the Star Wars movie that was announced years ago. So discussing it in an interview, he said, quote, I don't know if that's going to be Star Wars. I hope it'll be that, but there's a whole lot of other little things that I've got my sticky little fingers attached to. So we'll see. Yeah, like I said, like we kind of suggested last time, uh, it would be a really big thing to do the announcement of his movie at Celebration, in next year. But that may be, up too far ahead for them, or he might be looking to do something before he jumps into Star Wars.
So this kind of is like the Liam Neeson thing, just a little bit. I mean, it's like it. Again, I've said many times on this podcast, I played in a band, and here's how when somebody comes up and makes a request, you always tell them, yeah, we'll try to get to that later. Or, yeah, we'll play that next set or something. I mean, you never say, no, I hate that song. I've done that once, but no, you don't say, no, I hate that song, or no, we're not going to play that, because then the person's going to walk out and leave. So, Taika gave a non-denial denial or non-answer, right? It's like, I got a lot, hope so. I got a lot of stuff going on. We'll see, whereas I can't believe that a director and a production company is that loosey-goosey. I would have to think it's like somebody is like saying, all right, you're going to start shooting on X date. Does that work for you? Yes or no. Can it be 2 weeks later? I don't know. I just can't believe that it's like, maybe, but they're under NDA to say, because they're not going to, leak that story. So anyway,
I think you're right. I mean, I really
that'd be a
do.
first.
These are the things that they have to tell reporters and people who ask those questions. Just I don't really know.
You have the answer in your back pocket because you're going to be, going on Jimmy Kimmel, as big of a Star Wars nerd as he is. He's going to ask Liam Neeson, "Are you going to be in the Obi-Wan?" So you have something prepared. Or Taika Waititi, everybody's going to talk to you about either, Thor, or they're going to, talk about what you were doing on that balcony, or they're going to ask you about the Star Wars movie. So you have your, you don't want to, you have your answer that's not going to create a story, so anyway.
Most of the time, this is what you're going to get. Every now and then you'll get like some crazy thing from somebody who's like, no, that thing got canceled.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, now we have a headline. All right, now we have news.
So that actually happened. Did you listen to the Star Wars Underworld podcast? They were when Ming-Na Wen, they played the audio from it. Ming-Na Wen was on the 501st event that we plugged a couple weeks ago.
1138,
yeah, and she let it slip that Book of Boba Fett wrapped. And somebody on the call, one of the 501st guys goes, because they knew that, oh my God, she just said something, and so not that there's anything.
And let's be fair. I mean, Taika directed the last episode of season 1 of Mandalorian. I'm pretty sure he's keeping in constant communications with Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni. They know that if they need to, if they're looking to make that be then his next project, what his schedule is going to look like, what it needs to be done, when he's done with Marvel. If he wants to go do something else like another Jojo Rabbit before he takes that on, they can work that around his schedule. So, obviously it's not going to be, this is not going to be just dropped out of the blue, but it'll be interesting to see. I'll finish up right quick though, because speaking of Star Wars movies, they were interviewing, and this would be a nice segue, Aaron, they were interviewing Michael Waldron, who's the showrunner, writer for Loki, and he's also writing the script for the Kevin Feige produced Star Wars movie. So he's doing this interview with GQ, and they asked him, well, what about working with Kevin Feige for Star Wars now? And he goes, his quote is, it's very early days on Star Wars. That's probably the thing I can say the least about, unfortunately. Then he gets into stuff that Kevin Feige shares with Sam Raimi, who's directing Doctor Strange 2, which he co-wrote, and stuff like working with Dan Harmon. And so he's talking about how Kevin's a great listener, wants to hear his ideas, And he says, I think, I'll finish with this. He says, and I think Star Wars at its best is a story about family. Han, Luke, and Leia were a family. You love seeing them together, and you hated it when they were split apart. It's great characters, so that's nothing new. I'm not going to blow anybody's mind with that headline, but that's my biggest takeaway. So he's already kind of focused on what he's got to do, but he admits it is at the maybe chapter one, verse one of where that story, where that's got to be, in terms of making that movie come out to theaters.
So this is what I think, 24-hour news cycle and social media and podcasts and things like that. That's what has, imagine if those were around in 1980, because when we were kids, it was like Star Wars. And then you went about your life, and then all of a sudden there's a new Star Wars coming out. It wasn't, so-and-so was seen at Elstree Studios. So, or, there's this is being built, and, spy satellites are taking pictures of stuff. So people know, like, the minute anybody breathes life into a new Star Wars project, and then they want it to be now, when it's like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and, but
I'm trying to remember which website. One of the Star Wars news websites made a comment that maybe what Lucasfilm's looking to do is potentially say, we know Rogue Squadron is coming sometime in 2023. They could look to maybe have one of those two other properties, whether it's Taika's or Kevin Feige's, in 25, and then the other one come out in 27, because they have that whole idea of doing a Star Wars movie and then an Avatar movie. So who knows? But again, we're asking about all this stuff in 2021. That's 4 years and 6 years from now. So all that could change between now and then.
Well, I tell you, and I'm going to make this into the segue into what we're going to talk about with Loki. I'll tell you that Disney Plus TV, so whether it's Marvel or Star Wars, gets me far more excited than movie releases, because I think they're hitting this stuff out of the park. It was funny because so we're 2 episodes into Loki, and we'll it's just basically going to be a conversation about what we think so far. But I was having a conversation with Scott Colesby, who's been on, he's a friend of all of ours. You all know Scott, but the people who are listening, he's been on the show before. And it was interesting because I didn't realize how nerded out this show is, and how deep into the lore, into the Marvel comic book. I mean, this is like you're in. So they're having to. It works on multiple levels. Somebody like me, who, the only thing I know of Loki, as far as Marvel is concerned, is what I've seen in the movies. And then there's people like Scott and probably you guys that know all the stuff from the comic books that are getting it, on a deeper level. So, but I don't know. Like I said, first 2 episodes so far, it is really pretty good. I don't know. What do you guys think of Loki so far?
I think one of the things that we've been saying about these shows it still applies here, which is that it allows you to tell these stories that you really can't tell in that other format, the cinema format. So you're able to tell more of a longer, more serialized kind of story in this format, but you're also able to take risks and do interesting things and touch on topics that you may not otherwise touch on, take risky narrative chances that you may not take in the movies necessarily. And I think like we're seeing some more of that here in the early going too. And it'll kind of like in what you're talking about, Aaron, which is like, well, let's go into the lore here and like really go for it. We're gonna introduce this character, and we're gonna talk about these things, and
well, specifically, sorry, Scott talked about, he said the TVA, the time variant association, right? Did I get that correct?
Yeah,
anyway,
I think so.
He said, it was frustrating to him because he knew all about it, but people like me didn't know anything about it. So you had to get that, 5-minute infomercial, that was the cartoons explaining what the TVA was, it was all exposition. So I just I found it funny that it was like, to me, I didn't feel like it stopped the story dead or anything, but he was already 6 steps ahead. So,
What I like about it though is that you're in a position with these shows, you have to fill the shows out, right? And this is something that Netflix has been guilty of. It's like, well, let's go do 12 episodes of 40 minutes each, and that's all we're gonna do. And then it's like, well, how do you fill out those 12 episodes? And then there's like this filler problem. And so what Disney's been doing here, that I think is really smart, is we're not just going to create a bunch of new characters that nobody has any sort of knowledge of. We're going to draw from the actual source material here. And like, you're not beholden to it. You're not saying, oh, we're necessarily going to present this character in this way and this other character is going to mean this thing. No, none of that's the case. It's, I'm going to draw from it so that people are like, oh wow, whether you know it or not, like the longtime fans, like you said, Aaron, are going to be like, whoa, hey, I know about that thing, I know about that person, I know this, and they're going to be more invested right off the bat, right? But the other people who have never experienced these characters before, they're going to be inspired to do research. All right, well, who's this? And so, like, then they're going to go out and they're going to go down the internet rabbit holes of Google and everything else to try to figure out who these people are. And then they're going to become more invested. And so, like, I think it's a win-win, really. Like, rather than just making new people up out of thin air. Because, again, like you said, you have to fill these episodes. You have to have rotating characters in and out to keep things fresh. They're drawing from the source material. And I just think that's incredibly wise.
Now, the uber nerds, my wife being one of them, and she said this is a compliment. She and Scott were talking about it. It's like the people right after that first episode, everybody's like, it's confirmed Loki is gender fluid. And it's like, yeah, in Norse mythology as well. It's like, that wasn't something that Marvel created and maybe walked away. It's like, if you know your mythology, yeah, it's always been a thing. So
Loki's given birth.
It's like, whatever. Yeah, okay. But
Yeah,
I mean, that was
the
big thing after the first episode, because it shows on his ID card or whatever, gender fluid. And everybody's like, he said a thing. And it's like, well, good, because that's what it has always been, and actually, and then the second episode, he meets up with the female version of Loki. So,
Yeah, Lady Loki. No, it's interesting. A lot of people get, I always think back to this.
Spoiler alert, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think back when we saw the trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy so many years back. I go, Marvel couldn't have done this then. Just like Guardians of the Galaxy couldn't have been the first Marvel movie. They needed to get Iron Man in the door. They needed to get Captain America. They needed to do the Avengers. They needed to get you in the van with the candy that they know you like before they were willing to offer you all the other candies. Because the fact of the matter is, there is a lot of esoteric, a lot of very out there, a lot of very silly and trippy kind of stuff, which we're going to see when Shang-Chi rolls around later this year, when the Eternals roll around next year. This is Marvel saying, okay, you're willing to put up with Guardians and a talking raccoon and a talking tree, and now you're willing to put up with Asgard and Loki and the Norse mythos, and now we're gonna hit you with the Time Variance Authority and Space Lizards and all this other stuff, and you seem rather comfortable with all that. Okay, we'll just keep bringing up all the stuff that got developed in the 60s and the 70s when our guys were all tripping and crazy and just out there challenging stuff.
And that's the way that's the way it is in rock and roll too, right? I mean, the first two albums from a band are usually, they're easy to digest. They're, they sell a lot, they make them a lot of money. And then on the third album, it's like, all right, now we're going to make the music we really want to make.
Radiohead didn't come out with OK Computer first.
Well, yeah, I mean,
people would not put up with that.
I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan, and it's like, 10 is still, I think, their best album, but they would argue that like Post Vitalogy was their best stuff, and so it's just really interesting, but you're right, because you're going to introduce this whole Marvel universe. Like we said, you couldn't start with WandaVision because you wouldn't have gotten a following.
U2 didn't start with Acting Baby, for example.
Very much
There's
so.
another
Or
one.
Zooropa.
Yeah. They talk about experimental. Yeah, that one's fun. But yeah, it's smart what they're doing. And I gotta give Disney, the mouse, a lot of credit for this, that they're willing to let them just sort of play in the sandbox here.
But they're doing it right. They could have totally half-assed it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They could have really half-assed it. And they haven't. From a production standpoint, from the acting, the directors are getting to do these things. It's really interesting that I think when we say TV, that draws, it's like watching the Ewok movie, right? I mean, it's like that, but now
The
it's
first
like,
or the second?
but now they're yeah, but now they're saying, listen, it doesn't matter. A Black Widow is going to be coming out either on Disney Plus or on the big screen. Your choice. We're still going to get your money, and you're still going to get the same production value. And that's, so they're not seeing any limitation to a smaller screen.
Not right now. Yeah, and again, like the other thing too is they're not being obstructionist to the content creators. So well, this is not family friendly enough, for example, right?
Right.
I
mean, you see murders and you see stuff, and
yeah,
you see them challenging. Here's what I know what I'm like when I recognize the quality of the people behind the scenes. When you go and think, let's get Owen Wilson for the role of Mobius, and you're like, Owen Wilson, and then you see the role, and it's perfect.
Yeah, but no, I'm sorry, Fredo. I'm sorry. He's still being Owen Wilson. He's Owen Wilson in Wedding Crashers. It's the same Owen Wilson that, name it. He's fine, but it's the same. It's the same thing.
But you know why you get him? You're not getting him because you want Owen Wilson. You get him because you want his interactions with Tom Hiddleston as Loki. That back and forth.
And that's the thing that I'm digging so far is that we're like this is a buddy cop show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is 21 Jump Street in Marvel. And I didn't expect that. I suppose I guess I don't know what I expected, but it's not this. But I'm enjoying this. So we're gonna get a 6-episode mystery.
Yeah.
I think Kevin Smith gave a quote to this effect, but it's something that I always have believed very strongly too. When I'm consuming media, film and TV, it's like all you really need is you need two people on screen who are interesting characters, and just having them talk. That's all you need, really, at the end of the day, and that's what we've been given so far. With and I'm like. The subplots are like, oh my gosh, who's the variants and how is this all going to play out with the, the keepers of time and everything. It's like, fine. Yeah, that's all great. But when they're like in a room together, like across from the table, and they start volleying like tennis, they're volleying things back and forth from each other. And you're getting more character insight, and you're getting these sorts of cat and mouse interchanges, and I adore that stuff.
And let's give it up to Marvel here. Maybe Britt and I were talking about this when we were watching the second episode today, and so you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like all of this stuff Marvel has got the whiteboard flow chart, because we had, first of all, WandaVision came out. Mm-hmm. And we know we got Doctor Strange 2 coming out, the Multiverse of Madness, and what Loki has done in the second episode has created the multiverse. Am I right? Spoiler alert. Well, for the most part.
For the most
part, I think that's what we're looking at. Yeah.
So it's created a situation where the multiverse is being challenged, and you have all these diverging things, and so yeah. It's interesting the way that it's going.
But again, that's by design. It's like we're going to put this in here so people. It's sorry. Okay, maybe Star Wars kind of did it by, hey, we got to make sure we show this one, Mandalorian episode to show that you can heal people with the Force so that people don't freak out when Rey heals a snake. That was kind of done. But actually Filoni is kind of do it, and I think in retrograde, really, but Marvel, man, they are just planning these things out.
Here's what will be interesting, and it won't affect us because we're seeing it, but that it'll work a lot like the way Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter kind of work, where if you're watching that concurrently with the movies coming out, you got a deeper understanding of stuff going on. But if you didn't, it didn't take away from your sense. So there's going to be people walking into Doctor Strange 2, never seen a minute of Loki. It'll still work for them.
See, but
that's Marvel's secret sauce. It's you can get as much of it as you want or as little as you need, and we don't punish you for it.
No, you're right, but but I'm going to take just a small issue with it because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., as much as I liked Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that was yeah, right. It was just a thing that kind of WandaVision and Loki are on par with the storyline as any of the movies. It's just you're getting it in 40-minute chunks. So, and again, that goes back to my earlier comment that it's like they are not seeing a difference in the medium. They're not saying, well, it's TV, so we can F around a little bit and we can, jump the shark if we want to. No, it's like, no, we got a storyline to tell. And that storyline goes through these movies. Now we're going to go down here to Disney Plus, and that storyline's going to get expanded on. Then we're going to go back up here. So, and you're going to see it, obviously. Yeah. So anyway, sorry, Dave, you're going to say something.
I was just going to say, like, we've talked about how what's cool about these shows is like they draw on this source material. And so like there's this incentive for people to go back and do the summer reading. But then there's also this sort of what makes them so appealing, at least I think in my opinion, is that you're also looking forward. You're constantly looking forward. And so you're trying to predict what's going to happen. And so you're seeing these seeds get planted. Like you said, you see the variants just explode at the end of episode 2 here, and you're like, we just created the multiverse of madness, did we not? WandaVision, the events there, you're seeing groundwork being laid again for Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness, but you're also seeing groundwork laid for potentially the Skrulls television show, potentially Captain Marvel. So like it's fun, right? And the big one from this most recent episode for me, other than the multiverse thing, was the character reveal at the end. Because Enchantress is like, to me, is a very big candidate for Thor Love and Thunder. The title Thor Love and Thunder to me means Enchantress is going to show up. But yeah, but again, it's fun because you're kind of plant a seed here, and let's see where's this going to go, and the speculation, the water cooler nature of it is just very fun.
See, and again, to wrap things up, I think I think we're all in agreement here that this is another one of those series so far that you really don't have to have watched. If you've seen, even if you haven't seen any of the Avengers movies, I think you can still enjoy this show. They do set it up. It's like, you might have to look up, okay, who's this Loki dude? But otherwise, I think people could step into this one and just watch it and enjoy it. So
the first episode does a great job of catching you up on where Loki came from, what he's been up to, the kind of character that he is. And what I love about it is that it could have been an easy info dump. They didn't. They tied it into his growth as a character by putting him face to face with the consequences of his actions, because he rarely ever sees them, in the movies that he's been. So it's a good way to put it together.
Dave, are your kids watching Loki at all?
Yeah, we're watching that one. Like we usually have the big Friday night Disney Plus thing, and so now we've had to shift that, and apparently we're gonna have to shift that going forward too.
So what?
It used to be TGIF in the Glado house. But,
So what do they think? Are they as into it as anything else, or
it might be a little talky for them?
yeah?
But it's mostly keeping their interest because there's just a lot there with, again, the rabbit hole. They've got this giant like Bible-sized Marvel encyclopedia of characters, and so like the end of every episode they can go run and grab the encyclopedia and so looking through and figuring out who the characters are and who they might draw from next. And like for them, like Enchantress, let's go look up Enchantress, and figure out, is this, what's going to happen with her and what's her story and what's her deal and where are we going to go. So it's still fun.
So
it's still a lot of fun.
So kids can get into it. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk maybe not as long because we're just kind of hitting on some things, but Bad Batch. So last week we asked who we thought the mystery figure was, and none of us said, spoiler alert, nobody said Rex. Kind of
seemed
makes sense.
A little safe or obvious, maybe. But that
wasn't what I was expecting because, but now, again, in listening to a couple other podcasts, and I agree, now because Rex is in there, the last time we saw, I guess in Rebels, when we see Rex, he's like totally retired and done.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And he's with Wolf and Gregor. Now right now he's by himself, and he's in the thick of things because he's meeting up with somebody, rendezvousing with somebody. He's meeting up with the Bad Batch and getting their chips out and stuff like that. And I wonder, I guess my thought is I think he is right now hunting down as many of the clones as he can that are out there and get their chips out. And then once that's exhausted, then he's going to go, fishing in the desert.
Yeah.
Or is he the original Fulcrum? I don't know. That's jumping off a ledge, but I think we know the original Fulcrum was Ahsoka. At least we've been led to believe that.
Well, that's the one we first meet at the end of season 1 of Rebels. Mm-hmm. What's interesting is that the way that he found out about the Bad Batch was to trace and Rafa Marquez, who
Ahsoka had to have hooked him up with them. Yeah.
So that's the connection there between them. No, I think I'm liking the episodes. I like this last one. It was fun going back to Braca. The moment I saw it, I'm like, oh, that's the world from Jedi Fallen Order.
So are we going to see Kyle Kestis?
He's in there somewhere hiding. He should be as a young man, because this is happening a few weeks, if not a few months, from the fall of the Empire. Which, if you play that video game, when Order 66 happens, he takes a escape pod down into the planet and he's hiding down there.
So again, that's what I'm saying. Is Star Wars now doing what Marvel's been doing? Are we gonna get more of these connections? Because why else would you go to that planet? Why else would you go? You could go to any other unnamed. The Rebels did it all the time. They went to planets we've never seen before and made up goofy names. But we're taking you to a specific place at a specific time.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily the Cal that you would run into would be a little boy. He wouldn't be the character that the video games have, because that takes place years later. I think in some ways it's an easy kind of fix to go, hey, it ties into something you've seen before, rather than inventing a whole new planet. But I kind of started thinking after the last episode. I know that there's been some criticisms about Bad Batch kind of repeating the same steps that we've seen in other Star Wars shows. But I was thinking, in some ways, this is like, if you remember Rebel Season 1 or Clone Wars Season 1, and now people were kind of like meh about it, and it's not until later seasons. In some ways, I think people are feeling this is more like, oh, this season 8 of Clone Wars. It's like, no, it's its own thing. It's trying to establish its own rules. So you kind of have to give them time to expand themselves because that's gonna take a moment.
The thing
I think that's a really good point. Like, I wanted to say yes, patience, right? I mean, we get so caught up in the now, and this kind of ties in with the Pelicans thing we were talking about earlier, which is like, oh, they haven't won right away with this amazing talent, and it's like, let's see where it goes. Let's just kind of see how they develop this story, where they take it. There's a lot of interesting things they can do with it. You think about Omega and her storyline, they're going to have to pay that off at some point, right? Mm-hmm. Like you said, Aaron, Rex is in a totally different place at the beginning of Rebels. Where, like, how did he end up there? Because that feels like a very deliberate choice on his part.
And the thing is, he's done. At that point, he is done. It's taken a lot of convincing to get back into it. So that's going to have to be explained.
Yeah, and so there's a lot and again, we've talked about the themes too, right? Of the military themes. Ryan came on, especially, like, there's a lot of like really, really fertile ground for them to dig into there, because we haven't really dealt with some of those issues other than just superficially, and so there's opportunity with this series, and I think, like, just the fact that Filoni had done such a great job with Rebels, I'm willing to kind of just ride along with it for a little while and just kind of see where he takes this, because I do trust him.
I do think the breadcrumbs are there that I think we're going to see Ahsoka in this as well at some point, because the Trace and Rafa thing, again, that could have been that. It didn't have to be those two characters, and right. people are also saying that the R7 that they had, the droid that they had in the cockpit, they're saying that was Ahsoka's droid. Now I'm kind of like, I don't know. There was, from everything we know, R2D2 was an R2 unit, so there are several R2s, and just because they call this one R7 doesn't mean that it's necessarily Ahsoka's. But the color scheme is similar or the same, so. Is Ahsoka?
Would it bother you if Ahsoka showed up in this show?
No, I don't think it would bother me. I think it would make sense, especially if we know that she is, and I think that when whichever one of Trace or Rafa says we're working for somebody who's trying to fight the Empire, I don't think that's Rex. I think it's Ahsoka. And I think Rex has got his own mission right now, and I think they're right now connected, but I think ultimately they're working for Ahsoka. That would make sense. She probably went around and said, "Hey, I can help you guys out, and you need a better deal and fight on the correct side." And especially when one of them says, "Eventually, you take sides," So I think they're working for Ahsoka. So no, it wouldn't bother me. It's kind of what I expect.
Let me ask both of you guys this. Is there anything at this point, like if you saw anything that would make you groan, like if a character appearance or a planet appearance? Because again, we talk about these sorts of connections, and it seems a little odd that, like you said, that it would be these two specific characters. But again, that allowed them to introduce Rex in a slightly more organic way.
I would groan if we saw, if we saw like little Han Solo. when they went to Corellia, I was totally expecting that. I was totally expecting something like that. I would groan if we got that. Again,
what if we get Lil Jyn Erso? If they bump it to Saw Gerrera again,
I think that one would kind of be like a neat little Easter egg. I tell you what, I would the one I think that would be really cool is if we see some Enfys Nest, because the Enfys Nest that we saw in Solo, she talked about how when her mother wore the
armor.
outfit, the armor. So I think that would be a cool connection. Because in the Solo novelization, I mean, Enfys Nest is giving the coaxium to Saw Gerrera. So I've heard rumors of Hondo Anaka showing up, which I guess would again make sense. I don't know. It's kind of funny because it's like people complain and say, well, gosh, can't we have new characters or something like that? It's like we live in New Orleans and at like 6 degrees, it's 3 degrees of separation. It's like, we all have friends out there somewhere that none of us have talked about before, but we all know, and we don't know that we all know each other. You know what I mean? So, I mean, and so all these players are going to be, so if they show up, yeah. But no, that would make me groan a little, Han Solo. Or if we got, Chewie's backstory, how he got to Mimban or whatever in the mud. I don't know. How about you, Dave? Would you have something?
I think more Tatooine. More Tatooine just would feel forced, but I guess
that one doesn't make sense, right?
They've already had the Jabba connection though. Mm-hmm. So there might be more like gangster hijinks. I don't know, but like I don't need that in my life. I guess they could do it and they could do it well, and so I shouldn't judge it.
I still bet that we're gonna see Boba Fett at some point. Because we got Fennec Shand already, and I think that's going to link into the Book of Boba Fett. So I think it seems like Filoni is taking a page out of Kevin Feige's book and trying to, and everybody, yes, the Star Wars galaxy is huge, but I mean, if you make it as huge as it is, then the stories aren't going to be as meaningful.
And it's also, I mean, we go back to this point of, we haven't seen any of these characters in this period, in the immediate fall of the Republic, ascendancy of the Empire. We've had some books and some comics that told us how some of those characters reacted to what happened. But it's different seeing it, how they've been in the moment of, oh, crud, everything we were fighting for was a lie, and we got duped, and now the galaxy's in even worse hands. How they dealt with that, the aftermath. That's one of those topics that I'd love them to see tackled with the members of the Bad Batch, but also with characters like Rex, with Ahsoka, with all these other people who got played by Palpatine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these group of characters allows them to bring some of those other characters back, and then you get to see some of that, like you said, some of that untold story through these new characters' eyes. And I think like that was always kind of the selling point of the series, at least for me, which is like, okay, well, let's hear about this kind of period, this time period in the galaxy that we haven't heard about yet. But I'm also really excited about visiting worlds that we don't really know a lot about, and characters that maybe we don't know a lot about, because I think like there's just so much fertile ground in Star Wars that just hasn't really been mined yet. And this most recent one, Fredo, you brought up in chat, like that they're on this planet, this junk planet.
Mm-hmm. They're tearing down the old Republic's fleet, and it's being run by the Scrapping Guild and all that other stuff. Yeah, and the thing is, that's something that's going to continue until whenever we get to right before Jedi Fallen Order is beginning, because that's where it starts.
By the way,
Fallen Order.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like the Fallen Order connection there, and then again, the Mining Guild is a reference that we saw in
Rebels,
and in Mandalorian.
Right.
By the way, kind of, I mentioned Mimban earlier. This is kind of cool. I started watching some early season 1 stuff of Clone Wars. Again, I was watching actually the episode where we meet Echo and Fives and Heavy, and they're listening to like Armed Forces Radio or whatever, and they mention Mimban.
Fun.
So we think that in Solo, that's the first time. I mean, so no, I'm really digging this episode. I'm surprised this show. I'm really surprised for the last couple episodes we've strayed away from the Empire as the baddies. You know what I mean? So that's kind of interesting. I wonder when we're going to get back into that. But I'm really intrigued on what's going to happen with Rex. And so other than that, it's like I said, so far so good. So
Do you think that with the guild calling whoever they're calling the Empire? Do you think it's going to be Crosshair and his team coming to face off against them?
Honestly, I think Crosshair and his team are what the Death Troopers become, or what become the Death Troopers. I think you saw. I mean, that just seems logical there as well. However, okay, you mentioned another groaner, but I've heard rumors. Well, I guess that was the Andor, but I would think if I saw Orson Krennic, I would get a little groany on that one. I mean, if we're going to start talking about the Death Star again, because I think the Death Star is better spoken about in Rebels. I mean, you kind of start getting the backstory there. That's fine. This has got to be more of the start of the rebellion, Yeah. I think seeing, of course, Cassian would probably be too young at this point as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though he said he was in this fight since he was 6 years old. So do we get some sort of,
6-year-old Cassian? Instead of 6-year-old Solo, we get 6-year-old Cassian.
But it would make more sense if this 6-year-old Han Solo would just be, oh God, But this one is like, okay, yeah, he said I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. Maybe the Empire destroys his village or something like that, and the Bad Batch give him to in the hands of Rex, who takes care. I'm just spitballing here, but there's ways that how does Cassian get into the rebellion? That was a interesting line he dropped in Rogue One that could be paid off. In about this time. So who knows? Yeah. So like I said, we didn't give you much spoilers, but it's, like I said, I'm digging it so far. I'm worried if we get another episode like we've had the last couple that it's going to be stalled out. They need to kind of, I think, kick up the urgency just a little bit.
Mission of the Week's episodes kind of get dragged.
And Omega still has, I don't know what to make of Omega. I like her character. I just don't know what she is. If she just
where she's going.
If she just turns out to be, their pet dog, I mean, that's, that'll be a miserable opportunity. But there's something going on with her, whether it's force sensitivity or, what the Kaminoans were doing to create her. I've actually, so anyway, who knows? I think that might be, they need to start paying that off soon as well. So,
I mean,
that may be season 4.
Well, are we sure we're getting more than one season of the Bad Batch? They're doing 16 episodes. It's like, if you do 16 episodes and you're just going to stick in between basically this and Rogue One or this and Rebels, then I don't know. You talk about there's a lot of filler in there.
Well, again, that's why I go back to my point of this is season 1. I could see them where they drag out season 1, but it's similar to Rebels where it's season 2 really that things start kicking up story wise.
We've seen
links connect.
I know the alarm has gone off, but we've seen, young Kanan Jarrus. We could also at some point see young Harris and Dula.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things. Well, I mean, Cham Syndulla was already in Clone Wars. So, I mean, all that stuff. It could be.
I'll say one last thing about this. I think we don't know if there's going to be a second season, and we don't know if Filoni has told a complete story through the arc of this season, right? And we know that he has a tendency to kind of warm up slowly, as we saw with Rebels and Clone Wars. And so I would hope that this series gets a chance to kind of breathe and take off. And so I would encourage people, if they haven't checked it out yet, to watch it, because the raw numbers are actually gonna maybe tell the story of whether this
Continues.
whether it continues and whether we get an actual payoff that we're all gonna really enjoy or not.
Yep. Well, cool. All right. Well, thus wraps up our conversation for this evening. And don't forget, we left you a Twitter trivia question. So rewind and give us the answer if you know what the hell this thing was that the pike wielding thingamajig, whatever. But like I said, you follow us on social media. You can get this podcast. Tell your friends about this podcast. And if they ask where they can get it, they can pretty much get it anywhere you can get a podcast. You know, if there are topics that you would like us to cover, get our, 2 cents in on, let us know that on Twitter or on Facebook or, smoke signals or whatever. Otherwise we're good with just sitting around a virtual table and BSing about, all sorts of Star Wars stuff. But until next week, we will say who dat, and everybody have a great week.
McConkey.